Your utility bill is not supposed to look like a ransom note, and yet, in a few places in America, you can buy a house for the price of a used pickup. Move in feeling like the king of financial responsibility. And then the electric company walks up in a little reflective vest and says, "Cute mortgage. Now pay me." Everybody loves to say, "Just move somewhere cheap." As if America is a video game and you can just fast travel to a $900 mortgage with a garden, a porch, and emotional stability. But there is a catch. There is always a catch. In some towns, the house is cheap because the building is old. The pipes are tired, the grid is held together by weather prayers, and your heat comes from a fuel source that had to travel farther than most influencers. Today we are looking at 15 U.S. towns where utilities can cost more than your mortgage, especially if you have a small mortgage, an inherited house, an older home, or one of those "this is character" properties where character means the wind has indoor access. And no, this is not about mansions with heated driveways and 7 refrigerators. This is about normal houses, remote towns, high energy rates, expensive fuel, aging infrastructure, and the deeply American experience of realizing the cheapest house on Zillow has a monthly subscription fee called not freezing. Right now, this matters because affordability has become weird. People are not just asking, "Can I buy the house?" They are asking, "Can I survive the house?" The mortgage is only one animal in the zoo. You also have electricity, water, sewer, heating oil, propane, firewood, trash, internet, repairs, and whatever spiritual fee your utility company invents during storm season. The national conversation talks about housing like the payment is the whole story. It is not. In Hawaii, electricity can be more than 40 cents per kilowatt hour on several islands, with Hawaiian Electric listing 2025 average residential prices around 45.81 cents on Hawaii Island, 48.48 cents on Molokai, and 50.02 cents on Lanai. That is not a utility rate. That is a boutique lightning tasting menu. In rural Alaska, the state literally has a power cost equalization program because electricity in many rural communities can cost 3 to 5 times more than in urban Alaska, with the program serving about 82,000 people in 193 mostly diesel-dependent communities. When the government creates a special program, because your light switch has the financial energy of a payday loan, that is a clue. And in Maine and New Hampshire, the old New England deal is simple. You get a beautiful historic house with wood floors, charming trim, and enough air leakage to qualify as a musical instrument. Maine says a typical 550 kilowatt-hours residential electric bill in early 2026 is roughly $168 to $184, depending on the utility. Before you even start talking about the winter heating bill hiding in the basement, like a Victorian ghost. So let's count down 15 towns where the utility bill can come in. Wearing steel-toed boots. Number 15, Berlin, New Hampshire. Berlin is the kind of place where people online see the home prices and immediately start acting like they discovered a cheat code. Wait, you mean I can live in New England and not sell a kidney? Yes, you can. But then January arrives, kicks your door open, and asks how much oil you have in the tank. Berlin's average home value is around $180,000, according to Zillow's 2026 market page, which is practically a rounding error compared with coastal New England nonsense. But the problem is not just the mortgage. It is the old housing stock, the cold, the hills, the snow, and the fact that New Hampshire is the second most petroleum-dependent state for home heating after Maine. According to EIA, the lifestyle is gorgeous if you like mountains, snowmobiles, quiet streets, and the feeling that every building has seen at least 3 recessions. But that charm comes with a trade-off. A cheap older house can behave like a very large colander in winter. Heat goes in, money goes out, and the walls are just there for morale. Berlin is affordable until your furnace starts eating like a teenager. Number 14, Millinocket. Maine. Millinocket is beautiful in the way that only former mill towns can be beautiful. Rugged, stubborn, scenic, and slightly haunted by spreadsheets from 1978. It sits near Baxter State Park, which means you get access to some of the best nature in America. You also get access to winter, which drives like it owns equity in your checking account. Zillow puts Millennium's average home value around $153,000 in 2026. That sounds amazing. And it is, until you realize cheap houses in cold places often come with heating systems that were installed. Back when people thought shag carpet was a personality, Maine is the most heating oil-dependent state in the country, with the EIA saying about 2/3 of households use petroleum products, mainly heating oil or propane, for home heating. So yes, your principal and interest might look civilized, but your winter energy bill may show up dressed like a mob accountant. The lifestyle observation here is simple. Millinocket gives you space, force, quiet, and moose. But your budget has to include the ancient ritual of checking the oil tank and whispering, "Please don't be low. The house is cheap." The heat is doing luxury pricing. Number 13. Caribou, Maine. Caribou is for people who looked at Maine and said, nice. But could it be farther north and more emotionally committed to winter? This is Aroostook County. Potato country. Snow country. Real winter country. Not I wore a hoodie in October winter. Actual winter. The kind where your car makes a noise in the morning like it just read the news. The average home value in Caribou is around $160,000, according to Zillow. That is a number that makes people in Boston start breathing weirdly. But Maine's own electricity price page says a typical residential customer using 550 kilowatt-hour could see a monthly bill in the high $100s, and that is just electricity, not a full winter heat stack. Culturally, Caribou is practical. People know how to deal with storms. They know what a fuel delivery is. They do not need a TikTok explaining cold plunge therapy because they have a driveway. The downside is that a low mortgage does not mean a low cost of living. It can mean you bought a house where the monthly payment is polite, but the heating system is feral. In Caribou, the house whispers affordable, and the oil tank replies, for now. Number 12. Fort Kent. Maine. Fort Kent is where the continental U.S. quietly turns into Canada fan fiction. It is charming, remote, French-influenced, snowy, and deeply committed to making you respect insulation. Zillow lists Fort Kent's average home value around $187,000, again, compared with the chaos of American housing that looks friendly. You can almost hear a real estate YouTuber saying, hidden gem, which is usually a warning siren with a ring light. The problem is location. Remote northern Maine means longer winters, fewer nearby service options, and a heavier dependence on heating fuel. Maine's Energy Office also reminds people that electric bills include supply and delivery. And delivery means the wires, poles, equipment, and operations needed to get power to you. Translation: you are paying not just for electricity, but for the privilege of being connected to civilization across trees and snow. The lifestyle is peaceful if you want quiet, snow, and a town where people can identify your truck by sound. But the trade-off is that low housing costs can be eaten by remote operating costs. Fort Kent is affordable in the same way camping is affordable until you buy the gear. Number 11. Van Buren. Maine. Van Buren is the kind of place where the Zillow number makes your eyebrows leave your face. Zillow shows an average home value around $101,000 in 2026. That is not a typo. That is a whole house price like a luxury kitchen renovation in Connecticut. But this is where the trap gets spicy. A cheap home in a cold, remote town can make the mortgage look tiny enough that utilities can absolutely bully it. A smaller mortgage on an older house might sit in the $700 to $900 range depending on down payment, rate, taxes, insurance, and purchase price. Then winter comes along with heating oil, electricity, water, sewer, internet, and the furnace making sounds like it is summoning relatives. Maine has programs for weatherization because many homes need insulation, ceiling, and heating system improvements to reduce energy costs. That is helpful, but it also tells you something. A house does not have to be expensive to operate. Van Buren gives you affordability, community, and a slower pace. The trade-off is that your utility bill may look at your mortgage and say, move over, tiny. Number 10. Calais, Maine. Looks adorable on a map because it is tucked right against Canada. And maps are liars with colors. In real life, being tucked against Canada also means the winter is not playing. Zillow lists Calais around $156,000 in average home value. That is low enough to attract bargain hunters, remote workers, retirees, and people who just want a house with walls. And no bidding war against 16 cash buyers named Chad. But here's the issue. Maine's energy office says storm recovery costs alone currently add about $20 per month to the average residential CMP customer's bill. And that is part of a broader bill structure with supply, delivery, transmission, and other costs. Add heating oil or propane in a long winter, and the monthly math starts looking less like cheap living and more like subscription-based survival. The lifestyle is coastal, quiet, historic, and rugged. The trade-off is that whether here has a budget department, a cheap house in Calais may be a deal. But it is not a magic force field against February. Number 9. Rumford, Maine. Rumford is a classic wait. Why is this so cheap? Town. It is mountains, river views, old housing, and that industrial New England energy where every street corner looks like. It has opinions about labor history. Zillow's 2026 page puts Rumford's average home value around the high $100,000. And other market trackers show some lower-tier values well below that, which is why bargain hunters start hovering around it like seagulls over fries. But the catch is the house itself. Old homes are not bad. Old homes are wonderful. Old homes are also sometimes just wooden tents with basements. You can buy square footage, then discover you also bought drafts, tired windows, an elderly boiler, and the right to spend winter yelling, "Why is this room cold?" Maine's energy office specifically points residents toward winter heating guidance and efficiency resources because the heating burden is not theoretical. The lifestyle is practical and scenic. You get access to outdoor recreation and lower housing costs. The downside is that cheap square footage still needs heat, and every extra room is just another little mouth-demanding BTS. Rumford is where the house is affordable, but the air inside it is billing privileges. Number 8. Lubec, Maine. Lubec is stunning. It is remote coastal Maine with cliffs, fog, seafood, old houses, and views that make people say, "I could write a novel here," which is usually code for "I have not priced winter yet." Zillow shows Lubec's average home value around $150,000, so it is not the cheapest on this list. But compared with many coastal towns, it can still look like a bargain. The problem is that remote coastal living is not just a view. It is wind, salt air, old structures, limited contractors, and infrastructure that has to serve a small population across awkward geography. Maine's electricity rates are still high by national standards, even if Maine is comparatively lower than some other New England states. And the state says New England's costs are driven by infrastructure costs and limited energy supplies and production. The lifestyle is romantic if you like lighthouses and quiet. The downside is that romance does not insulate your attic. Lubec is the kind of town where you can watch the sunrise over the ocean and then immediately go inside to see if the furnace bankrupts you before lunch. Number 7. Pahoa, Hawaii. Now we leave the frozen oil tank and enter the tropical electric bill. Pahoa, on Hawaii Island, is one of those places people see online and think, wait, Hawaii can be affordable. And yes, compared with Honolulu or Maui resort areas, parts of Puna can look shockingly reachable. You get jungle, lava rock, rain, fruit trees, frogs screaming at night like tiny unpaid actors, and the dream of island life without the beachfront billionaire tax. But Hawaii Island electricity is no joke. Hawaiian Electric lists the 2025 average residential price for Hawaii Island at 45.81 cents per kWh. That means a household using 700 kilowatt-hours is staring at a power bill that can wander into the $300 range before you even add water, propane, internet, trash, or the surprise cost of maintaining everything in humidity. The lifestyle is lush, creative, independent, and very DIY. The trade-off is that infrastructure can feel patchy depending on where you live. And a cheap rural property may come with catchment water, septic, propane, or long drives for everything. PAHOA is beautiful, but the electric meter spins like it is training for the Olympics. Number 6. Ocean View. Hawaii. Ocean View is where people buy land in Hawaii and then slowly discover the phrase off-grid. Contains multiple invoices. This place can look wildly affordable by Hawaii standards. But affordability here often means you are trading conventional utilities for systems. Catchment water, propane, solar batteries, generators, septic, satellite internet. A driveway that might have a personal grudge against your suspension. Hawaii's high electricity prices are partly tied to imported oil and island isolation. According to Hawaiian Electric, which says fuel can make up roughly half of a typical bill, and that Hawaii has no nearby utility system to lean on when something goes wrong. That is the whole thesis of this video in one sentence. Isolation is expensive. It may be beautiful. It may be peaceful. It may be worth it, but it is expensive. The cultural observation is that Ocean View attracts people with frontier energy. People who are fine saying, yeah, the water comes from the sky and the internet comes from space. Respect. But also, please price the batteries. Ocean View is where the mortgage can be small, but the house comes with side quests. Number 5. Hana. Maui. Hana is paradise with a logistics problem. Everybody knows the Hana Highway as this magical road full of waterfalls, and tourists driving like they are in a perfume commercial. But living at the end of that road is different from visiting it while holding banana bread and blocking traffic. Maui County's 2025 average residential power price is listed around 41.58 cents per kWh by Hawaiian Electric, and nearby Molokai and Lanai are even higher. Electricity alone is already wearing designer sunglasses. Then add remote delivery costs, limited contractors, tropical maintenance, water systems, propane, and internet options that may not feel like the mainland. Hana lifestyle is slow, beautiful, tight-knit, and not for people who need instant Amazon delivery for emotional regulation. The downside is that everything takes longer and costs more because geography is undefeated. A cheap or inherited home in Hana can still produce monthly operating costs that bully the mortgage, especially if the house is older, humid, undermaintained, or running dehumidifiers and appliances hard. Hana is not cheap Hawaii. Hana is paradise, but the receipt is handwritten and somehow for $112. Number 4. Kaunukakai, Molokai. Kaunukakai is not the Hawaii most mainlanders imagine. It is not wall-to-wall resorts and people drinking cocktails out of fruit with legal names. Molokai is quieter, more local, more resistant to becoming a theme park. And that is exactly why people love it, but the electric rates are brutal. Hawaiian Electric lists Molokai's 2025 average residential electricity price at 48.48 cents per kWh. At that rate, normal usage gets expensive fast. A 600 kilowatt-hours month is not extravagant by mainland standards, but at Molokai pricing, it can look like your refrigerator joined a country club. The lifestyle is slower, community-centered, and less commercialized. The trade-off is limited infrastructure, fewer choices, and island-scale costs. If there's less competition and everything has to arrive by boat, plane, or miracle, the bills do not behave like they do in Omaha. And internet. In remote places, if wired options are weak, satellite can become the backup plan. Starlink's current U.S. residential plans list tiers such as $55, $85, and $130 per month depending on speed, before equipment and taxes. That is not insane by itself, but stack it on top of island electricity and you start building a financial lasagna. Kaunukakai is peaceful. The utility bill is not. Number 3. Dillingham, Alaska. Dillingham is where Alaska reminds you that maps are not just drawings. They are invoices. This is a remote hub in southwest Alaska, tied to fishing, aviation, and the kind of practical toughness that makes mainland complaints sound decorative. But the energy situation is serious. Rural Alaska often relies on diesel for power generation. In the state's PCE program exists because electricity costs in many rural utility areas are 3 to 5 times higher than urban Alaska. Dillingham also has the heating side of the problem. The Alaska Energy Data Gateway maintains community fuel price data because heating fuel and gasoline prices vary so much across communities, with surveyed fuel prices meant to represent what residents actually pay per gallon. At local vendors. This is the lifestyle trade. You get community, land, fishing culture, remoteness, and a deep connection to place. But the cost of keeping a house warm and powered is not casual. Heating fuel, electricity, freight, repairs, and internet can all cost more because distance taxes everything if your mortgage is small, inherited, subsidized, or attached to an older home. Utilities can easily become the main character. Dillingham is beautiful, but the utility bill has Bush Plain Energy. Number 2. Nome, Alaska. Nome sounds like a place from a children's book until the bills arrive, and the children start learning compound interest. This is an iconic Alaska town with history, gold rush lore, the Iditarod finish line, Bering Sea weather, and the very specific energy of a place where remote is not a vibe. It is logistics. Some local rate trackers show Nome electricity in the 30 cent plus per kWh range, and third-party bill estimates can climb far higher depending on consumption and rate schedule. More broadly, Alaska's own PCE framework confirms that rural electricity costs can be multiples of urban Alaska. Cost. Then there is heating. You are not heating a cute little coastal cottage in a gentle breeze. You are heating against Alaska. Fuel has to get there. Parts have to get there. Technicians have to get there. Your internet may involve satellite or limited local plans. Your grocery bill is already doing PA or KOU. Culturally, Nome is tough, unique, and fascinating. It is not a suburb with colder branding. The downside is that every system in your house is working harder than it would in a normal climate. Nome is where your utility bill does not knock. It enters with a parka and a clipboard. Number 1. Utqiagvik, Alaska. Number 1 is Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow, because at some point the list had to stop pretending geography was fair. This is one of the northernmost communities in the United States, above the Arctic Circle. Facing cold, darkness, wind, permafrost, coastal erosion pressures, and utility challenges that would make a Sunbelt subdivision simply evaporate. The Alaska Energy Data Gateway tracks community electric rates and includes both residential and subsidized residential rates, because in rural Alaska the difference between sticker price and what residents actually pay after PCE can matter a lot. It also notes that PCE subsidies apply to the first 750 kilowatt-hours per residential meter per month, and usage above that cap can be charged at the full unsubsidized rate. That cap is important, because if you are in a place where everything is electric, mechanical, heated, pumped, stored, insulated, or protected from freezing, you can hit usage levels that make the meter feel personal. The lifestyle is not comparable to normal American housing math. Utqiagvik is culturally rich, historically important, and deeply tied to Inupiat life and Arctic reality. But the downside is that nearly every comfort depends on expensive infrastructure. In an extreme environment, a small mortgage here does not mean small costs. It means the house payment is just one little penguin in a blizzard of expenses. And yes, I know there are no penguins in Alaska. That is how stressed the utility bill made me. So what do we actually learn from all this? The cheap house is not always cheap. Sometimes it is cheap because the market is quietly saying, good luck heating this. Sometimes the monthly mortgage looks small because the real cost is hiding in electricity, oil, propane, water, sewer, internet, and infrastructure risk. And sometimes the place is genuinely wonderful, but wonderful does not mean inexpensive. This is not me saying people should avoid these towns. Honestly, many of them are more interesting than the copy-paste suburbs where every house is beige and every restaurant is named after a plank of wood. Berlin, Millinocket, Caribou, Fort Kent, Van Buren, Calais, Rumford, Lubeck, Pahoa, Ocean View, Hannah, Kaunakakai, Dillingham, Nome, and Reykjavik all have real communities, real culture, and real reasons people stay. But outsiders misunderstand them because outsiders look at the sale price. Locals look at the furnace, the roof, the fuel tank, the delivery route, the outage history, the water system, the internet options. In the age of the windows, that is the difference between buying a house and buying a life. And if you have ever lived somewhere where the utility bill beat up the mortgage in a dark alley, drop the town in the comments. Not in a shame the place way, more like a public service announcement for the next person who thinks affordability begins and ends with a Zillow screenshot. Also, if this saved even one person from buying a beautiful old house with the thermal performance of a screen door, gently tap the like button. Not aggressively. We are not trying to scare it. The real housing crisis is not just that homes cost too much. It is that the homes that look affordable often come with invisible monthly traps, energy, water, heat, internet, repairs, insurance, transportation. The full bill is always bigger than the listing. So here is the final question. Would you rather pay more for the mortgage in a place with predictable utilities, or buy the cheap house and gamble every winter like your furnace is a slot machine? Because in some towns, the American dream is still affordable. You just have to Venmo the oil tank first.